Hey guys, it's Alex, and as promised, I'm gonna go ahead and go live and see if I can add John. Crap, I forgot how to do it last time, or I forgot how to do it. Let me see if I can. Yep, go live with, and I'll just type in John, and hopefully it gets Mr. John Lund Jr. on the horn, and see if I can get him on this guy. Let me see. Just bear with me, guys. I'm terrible at this stuff. So a lot of stuff happened this weekend, and I want to go ahead and talk about it with John about the S550 breaking the 6R80 record and the subsequent fallout. R200, the whole 9 yards. So I'm waiting for John to get on. Man, my head is shining. Look at that. There we go. Oof, terrible. Hey, John, what's up? Speak up. I want to make sure I can hear you real good. Oh, yeah, real good. Yeah, real solid. So what's up, man? Congratulations again on the record-breaking pass. No asterisks. It is a legit record-breaking pass. How have you held up with all of the subsequent fallout from the 778 pass?
I don't know. I guess the only fallout would be the chit chat about the transmission and legitimacy. But
Right.
as far as coming in on a Monday after doing that, it's just been kind of cloud nine since Sunday, I guess you could say. So
Yeah. Your reaction was real cool to see. It was genuine. It was kind of one of those things that didn't seem planned. You seemed really excited to see that because the scoreboard didn't light up the ET. You guys had to
yeah.
wait for that printout. So did you feel in the subsequent pass, you're like, man, that thing's moving out. It might be it. Or did you think it would be like a low 8-second pass when it first happened?
Looking at it, I had a feeling it was going to be a new personal best, but I did not expect. I expected probably a 799 or an 80. But when I saw 7.7, I didn't care if it had been, I don't even think I realized it was a 778. I think I just saw 7.7 and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I saw the 60 foot and then I just started piecing it all together in my head, saw the 142 mile an hour in the 8th, and I said, man, that thing was making some jam. So
Look at the back half from the 8th to the quarter split in terms of mile an hour, like 34?
30, what did it do? 142, almost 36, which is typical for that. But on the second pass, it did 136 in the 8th because he lifted after the wheelie and then got back in it, and it did 40 in the back half. So, and we actually pulled a little timing on that hit to funny. It was a test pass. It was like, let's just see what it does, because we already did it. We didn't really have any intentions of, pushing it any harder that day. So we just wanted to see what we could get away with, and it still did 176. So, and it probably would have. I was telling my dad based on the 60 foot, that pass would have been a 7.73, I think, with the ET.
Right.
Just
because 60 footed 118, and what was the pass where it went 778? What did it 60 foot then?
1.210.
Wow, so that's a pretty good improvement.
It did a 2.12 60 foot. So, we obviously didn't show that part, but the first pass he did, it blew the tires off. It was probably the third or fourth car on the track, and it was still cloudy, and it was about 45 degrees out, so the track surface was still a little chilly.
Right.
So I told him to do a big burnout. I didn't know what the tire temperature was going to do, and it spun. We backed it up. I told him to not do another burnout because I think it would just heat the tires up too much. And he launched, and it hooked, but then he lifted. So he was wearing new racing shoes, and he says his foot slipped off. But I think it was starting to put him in the seat, and he wasn't ready for it. So he came back around. We weren't going to change anything. Check tire pressure real quick. I made an adjustment there. Made a quick, just off the cuff, just gut feeling with the suspension. I just pulled a little compression out of the rear shock because I had previously upped them to hit the tire a little harder.
Right.
So I just pulled it out thinking, maybe the track will be still a little loose. And we had lowered tire pressure. Well, the sun had come out a little bit, so the track got kind of sticky, and he did a wheelie, and he lifted, comes back. He's yelling at me, "Why'd you make me do a wheelie?" And I said, "I told you I was going to do a wheelie." So I said, "It was pretty straight. Here's the video. You don't have to be scared." And he said, "Okay, that's not that bad." So right after that, we didn't make any changes. Just made sure tire pressure was good and checked fuel. Put another bag of ice in it. I think we only used like 3 bags of ice because the system's so efficient. It was cool out. And he ripped off the 778, and that was it. So
how did he react when he got back? Because that's one thing I'm missing out of the whole thing is his reaction.
Right. So I should have videoed all that, and I have a picture somewhere. Randy Hadid was there, and he was actually helping my dad with the chute at the end of the track because it's a pain to get out, unstrap, all that, because you have to be a circus employee to be able to get out of that roll cage. So he was helping him at the end, and he comes back around, and I texted my dad, and he said, "No way." So yeah, he was texting and driving on the way back, and he said, "No way," and he didn't believe it. And I brought the time slip, and at that point, I'm just like in shock. He starts freaking out. We're all yelling, screaming, crying, whatever. And he gets out, and the first thing he did was give me a hug. So Randy has a picture somewhere of that, and we cried a little bit. So not because, that sounds, to some people, it's like, oh yeah, we went fast, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Right.
Because of the, Desan working on the car and just the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into it. And it's so much more than just going 770. It's just, it's the team effort put into it. And the fact that it's our own car that we physically have turned wrenches on. We've engineered a strategy to make things work, kind of going against the grain a little bit, that not just going off what people recommend. It's just kind of, our theories put into practice, basically. And the 4R200 is really that the hub, the brainchild between, Jake Long at Power by the Hour. It's his invention, so to speak. The brainchild there between me and him making that work. It's just, last year when we figured it all out, I thought this part and this transmission are going to do something pretty cool. So, just it sounds so cliche, but it's just you put your mind to it and stuff happens. So, and when I think about it in the grand scheme, it's just kind of take a big breath and it's humbling. So.
Last year, when I saw Joey Basil's car do that power wheelie, and it did like a 1-2 and on the back tire, I went, I haven't seen that from a Coyote in a long time. And Jake let off. I think Jake let off because he was like, what the fuck was that? And I went, that's cool. So hopefully we can apply it. So now, going forward, I know that the Blue Goose is basically going to stay the same setup pretty much before it hits mod nats, because why, if it's not broken, nothing to fix. Are we going to stick to the general setup? Are we going to tweak some things? And then we'll start talking about the 6R80 versus 4R200 debacle that people are out there trying to put out there. 2 or 3 people, very small minority, but the vast majority are congratulating us and they get it. Right. But there's 2 or 3 people out there that just can't get it through their head. But real quick, are we going to do a lot big changes to the Blue Goose before mod nats, or we're going to just kind of keep it how it is?
So that we want to keep the wheelie down, obviously, because the car like to go a little left when it's on 2 wheels, and we have some ideas of why it's doing that. Not to get too technical, but obviously the IRS isn't meant to be on 2 tires. for very long. And at that power level and how weight is distributed in the car, we think that it may have almost turned into a caster system. So we need to scale the car again and see if we can shift some weight around. Because I think that obviously the driver's side is going to have more weight. And when it's up on the back two tires, the distribution's way different. And it's going to basically, pivot the car. And, it's the way that the boost controller is set up is it's adding power to maintain a certain acceleration. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we have an AMS 2000. It's got the GATS system on it, G-meter assisted tuning system. And I've been working with Sebastian, or he's been working with me on showing me how to use it. And that was the first implementation of it. And he told me, just be ready for it. And that's what happened. So it's just, helping maintain acceleration and filling in the gaps. So as far as what we're going to do, we're going to change the rear gear out before mod nats to tame the wheelie down. Gives us a better starting line ratio. We can go into that when we start talking about the 6R80 versus the 4R200 gearing, but that will help the car come out of the hole, not softer, but smoother. And hopefully it keeps the power wheelies down. And what's the difference between a wheelie and a power wheelie? So you have a wheelie that pops and falls. As you see in the video, especially the slow-mo, it doesn't pop up. It's a very rigid launch. It's perfect. And it comes out, it has the squat we want. It's gripping hard. The tires are got slight wrinkle. Everything looks great. And it power wheelies because it starts riding up the ring gear in the rear end because it's adding so much power and the tires have dead hook. So it's just, it's one of those cool things that you don't see often. Granted, it becomes unsafe if it just keeps climbing up. So we're trying to avoid that.
Oh, that's cool. So let's get into the 6R80 versus 4R200 stuff. Now, we obviously don't want to get too into the weeds because a lot of people don't understand what's even happening internally. But if you can sort of tell people, a lot of people think we're physically removing gears from the transmission. Like Jake somehow removed 2 gears from the transmission. But my understanding is nothing is removed. It's just changing how the gear ratios are via the hub. In terms of physical parts, they're all the same except the hub. Can you explain in layman's terms? Because, look, a lot of my fans are not that smart, okay? So they need the layman's kind of like down and dirty explanation as to what the 4R200 really does on a 6R80.
So I've had to type this explanation, and it's very difficult to type it, but I've gotten into layman's terms with guys that are wanting to put it in because, we have to explain how the overdrive part works because, there's the whole 3/4 shift debacle. Well, I'll start from the beginning. So basically, and I can actually spin the camera around. I have a picture up. So I don't know can you see that clearly?
Yeah, actually really well.
So this is the easiest way to explain it. So it's a breakdown of the internal of the transmission, and you can see the different pieces and parts. And this is specifically first gear, but where the planetary sits is right there inside of that housing. So, and you can see the actual front planetary right there.
Got it.
So that part comes out and it becomes a fixed hub. So a planetary gear set is basically, in this case, 4 gears around a sun gear. So it's up planet gears and then you have a sun gear. So what that does is create, in this particular transmission, a 1.52 ratio. I guess you would call it an increase. So, and it's increasing the ratio of the rear planetary. And that's where the actual gear ratios come from in the transmission. And that's called a Rabino planetary gear set. So, because there's 2, it's so hard to see on this because
it looks good on mine. So, yeah.
These 2 spin the same and this one does not. And there's 2 sun gears in here. And when you hold different clutches in the transmission, it creates different ratios. So when we remove that and place it with a 1-to-1 hub, so it's no longer 1.52, it reduces the ratios of the transmission to 274 first, 154 second, and 1 to 1/3. And that's 1 to 1/3 because third typically, or third in this transmission is 1.52 ratio. And 1 to 1 means that everything is spinning at the same time. So that means the ring gear all the way to the front is spinning 1 to 1. And so there's not gears in it per se like a manual car that everyone thinks of. So there's not 6 gears. You're basically holding different clutches and driving different clutches to create different ratios in the transmission. That's how a planetary gear set works. That's how a Turbo 400 works. So it's really no different, and it's this technology that's been around for many, many years. And like other people were saying in that argument, is there's 2-speed Turbo 400s. There's guys launching in second gear on Turbo 400s. You can change the ratios in a Turbo 400 because you can change the size of those gears to create different ratios. So when I hear of 6 gears, I don't really think of it the same way because I think of the clutches in the transmission. All the clutches in the transmission are still there. Do we use all of them? The only one we're not using is the overdrive clutch when we're going down the track, because guys that use 4th gear have to use the overdrive clutch. I'm not using 4th gear in 3rd, so it only uses the direct clutch and the forward clutch. So
what are people doing that retain the 6R80? Launch in 1st gear, are they trying to stay away from being in 4th gear to prevent slippage? Do they try to numerically lower the gear set in the rear end, like a 308 or a 273, to stay away from that? I'm saying high-powered cars. I'm saying low 8-second cars. I'm not sure about anyone else's car, but do they tend to stay away from that? Or have you seen where they still use 4th in high-powered applications and the clutches do hold at that power level?
Well, obviously, Brett LaSala he's using 4th gear at the back, and there's many other cars, even ones that we've tuned, making 1200 plus. Joey Basile's car, he trapped, I think he went 168. I don't know if he went 170, but he was going pretty fast at 4,000 pounds using 4th gear. And I think Jake ripped that transmission apart, and the overdrive clutches look pretty good. And the reason I personally, and I think Jake too, don't like to use the overdrive clutch is because it's the smallest clutches in the transmission by diameter. So physically, the holding capacity isn't as great. So as far as it working, it does work, obviously, because Brett's been 182 and transmission's alive. And so I think that what people don't want is different ways to do the same thing. I would argue that launching with a different 1st gear ratio is maybe more advantageous depending on the weight of the vehicle. Obviously, the starting line ratio, that's something that's been around for many years and trying to take advantage of it. But saying that, we'll just get into it, saying that the 1st gear 417 ratio makes the 6R80, it's just, there's so much fallacy in that statement. It's not even funny, because we're still using the same parts. So to go back to what you're saying is, if we wanted to get the same ratio that we're using, I think I calculated this before, it's based on tire size, but 232, if someone made a custom 2.32 rear gear ratio, you could have the same final ratio at the tire as we would with a 340 or 350 gear. So if we go to a 325 gear, obviously you'd have to go, even less. And that argument is like, well, a rear end isn't going to handle that. So, or is it even physically possible to fit that in there?
Exactly. And it's one of those things where you're not going to win. I think people that understand, like racers, they see this and they go, yeah, legit, badass. Non-racing motherfuckers are like, oh, well, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. So those people we just don't pay attention to. That reminded me of something. Actually, we were talking about, I'm going to switch subjects because I think the record stands. The fact that Brett recognizes the record is all I care about. I don't care about anyone else's opinion. If the previous record holder recognizes the record, that's all that matters. And I guarantee that Brett's going to go like 750 like next week.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So I know it's going to be one of those back and forth things, and we're all about it, and we're a friendly camp, and we're all good. But I just wanted to kind of dabble on that. But I want to skip over to 2018 Mustang versus Gen 3 versus Gen 2. Now, I've started to see people start saying, crap, that S550 just ran a 770. Maybe I should stay with my Gen 2 a little longer and not jump ship to 2018 yet. Truth be told, a lot of people are seeing their cars a little differently based on that past. They're like, crap, that's pretty amazing. What is your take in terms of that kind of argument? Because I know the 2018 and the A10 is proven. Manuel Gomez, his boys, and Jesus, they're rolling. What's his name? Ali Raza, rolling down there, doing real good. But do you foresee people saying, let me stick around with this 15 to 17 car for a little longer because it seems to be vetted, lasts a long time, and if they don't tick after 2,000 miles, like mine?
I think the 10R80 is a viable option, but I don't think the aftermarket is there yet. And the tuning side has caught up to the transmission capacity to handle power and torque a lot quicker than it did back with the 6R80. So, look at it. For the Mustang, at least. So the 18 Mustang came out end of last year, and one already went mid-8s. How long did it take for a 6R80 to go mid-8s?
Well, wasn't it Chris Cruz that went? Yeah.
It was 2013. So,
and his car was an 11 or a 12?
A 2011, and that was with a 4-liter rear feed Whipple. And that was back in 13, and that record stood for a while. And that, so that's 3 years from the release of the transmission. And that was because of the aftermarket, and but mostly because of tuning, trying to get them to shift. Now I'd say it's not a problem. The 10R80 will be very much similar, but I think we figured out tuning them a lot quicker, and now we've reached a point where they just won't hold the torque. And there's always this unknown that we're fighting with torque and making them shift right, or is it causing the clutches to slip to cause it not to shift right, or is it an endless cycle? So, you got to increase line pressure to have holding capacity, but if the clutches, the material won't work, then you're at a loss. So, I think that at this point, and I have a customer, his name's Jim, down with the Midnight Camp, and he has that Frankenstein motor, and it's got it's got a Gen 3 bottom end. It's been great, handled 16, 17 pounds with a CPR turbo kit. And it's got a 6R80 built with a 252 Circle D converter, similar to what we have in the blue car. And the thing rolls. It went at $899 pretty easily. I would say drama-free. So are guys going to want to keep their 6R80s for a while? I think so. I think the capacity.
What's your hope? Like if Junior was to say, man, I hope a lot of guys, like if in a perfect world, I know what I would say, okay? If you want to make big power now, and have consistency, the aftermarket support and the tuning support, stick with a Gen 1 or a Gen 2 car. If you want to be up to date and want to, go fast with new stuff, you can do it with the 2018, but I think Gen 1, Gen 2 is so well vetted that you can go just as fast with a similar setup, not on the Gen 1 motor, but I'm saying on the computer, the programming, and the aftermarket support than you can on a Gen 3. The problem is people like freaking Jesus and them go 860s, and everyone thinks, oh, I can go 860s with the same shit. You know?
Right.
And it's like, oh my God, you know, and you can, but they're a different camp. And you know them. Those guys literally start to work at 11 p.m. And then they, you know, till 6, 7 a.m., they're done.
Yeah.
They're just different people. They vet everything. They're ideal, but they race for a living. That is their life. That is what they do. So the files that they get, they're not that they're different, but they're a little easier to work with because of their lifestyle. You know what I mean? They seem to be all about that racing life, and they're easy to deal with that way.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's sort of, and we're pretty good at gauging this with certain customers. You kind of give them the upfront, like, if I change this is what's probably going to happen. Are you okay with that? They basically tell me from the beginning, don't do that to us. Just give us the sauce out the gate. Because we don't care. I think that a lot of people don't realize that, and they go into it going, $899 is easy with a 10R80. It's not that easy. And to make it do it, and I even tell customers this, it's a lot of work. You got to be patient with it. And, you know, and like you said, you know, if you have a 10R80 with a built motor that can handle the same boost as, let's say it's 30 pounds of boost, and you have a regular S550 like ours with a Gen 2 PCM, 30 pounds of boost. With a 6R80 is going to just walk away from it because you know, there's the aftermarket for it. So the 10R80 will just slip its way into oblivion. So
it's funny. I've been watching the comments as they go along. Everybody's in the house. I mean, all of the Lund Racing Camp. Some of the Midnight guys are in there. It's real cool to see.
Seniors in here. I didn't even know you had Instagram.
Seniors chatting up with everybody. Seniors like Miss, you know, Chatty Cappy. So let's talk about the Grey Goose, and not in too much detail. We're still kind of like keeping that close to the vest. But what are the plans for Grey Goose based on what we've seen with the blue car?
So right out the gate, we knew that we wanted to use a Gen 2 PCM with it for RPM capability, because you have the GT350. I've revved one to 9,500. I know it can go higher. Pretty sure I've heard there's 11,000 RPM limit on the PCM. Can a 6R80 shift that high? I don't know, but we're not going to shift one of the motors that high. We wanted just no limitation and a faster computer, so that's what we're doing. And then I said, let's lock the cams. Oh, you can't lock the cams on a Gen 2. No one knows how to do it. Well, we've tuned a few, NA, blown, whatever, lock cams, no problem. So we have that figured out. And the reason I want to do that is to eliminate some VCT issues, because we're not going to limit ourselves on boost level. And as you get higher boost with the Coyote motor, eliminating VCT helps make sure you know, the cams are always in the same spot, so because they can move around. So,
but the blue car still has VCT, correct? The blue car?
The blue car has VCT, and actually has stock solenoids, stock phasers, and there's actually some Ford Performance stuff out that you can upgrade that is, I believe, from the GT350 to help with oil control, so you don't have reversion issues when the cams are phasing. Granted, I'm not moving the cams that much when it's in high boost, and that's on purpose, but I like to have it down low to help with spool. And it helps for drivability on the street, because I mean, it is a street car at the end of the day. So, you know, when it's in NA form, it's nice to have torque. So
exactly. Can you tell everyone exactly what you phase the cams at?
Is someone asking?
No, it's funny because it's almost like people think you're giving up so much information, and I'm like, you know, relax, guys. He's giving you very generic, basic answers. We're not giving up anything.
There's so much stuff that's done to it that hasn't been said to people that you won't see. A lot with the suspension. Oh, the suspension. So There's this stuff that we've adjusted that no one's done yet because, like I said, we go against the grain, but it's with theory that we think works, and obviously it did because we have one of the quickest IRS 60 foots, not just on a Mustang, but across a lot of platforms. Yeah. So
yeah, and it was repeatable. The nice thing about that 60 foot was like 121, 120, 118, and I was like, shit, it's not a fluke. It's one thing to have a bunch of 1.3s and then one fluke 118.
Right.
But you've been in the same realm for a bunch of passes now.
Yeah, it's been 4 or 3 1.2s. So we did that 1.22 at MIR before the track went away, and it didn't wheelie because I wasn't rolling the power in, but it did do a 1.2 then, and the 1.18 was just a little extra power. So, and I think it can go consistently that quick. The next thing to focus on is not so much the 60 foot. And I wasn't really focused on the 60 foot. For the drag racers out there, everyone knows that you want to focus on the 330 and not just the 330 time, but it's about the delta between the 60 foot and the 330 and the 330 to the 660. After that, it's all she wrote. So you should have all the power.
The Grey Goose, after looking at it, honestly, after seeing what the blue car did, I think the Grey Goose, if everything rolls out, it should go, I don't want to say considerably faster, but it should go faster, easier, based on what we've seen. Yes. You know what I mean?
Well, it is lighter, considerably lighter. It's got a 25.3 cage in it. We've already posted some pictures of it. It's going to be a race car, not so much a street car, but we're doing it right. Safety, obviously, is first. Yes. The intention with the car, in my opinion, as much as my dad may not want to believe it, but it's going to go 200 mile an hour with a 6R80. So in the quarter mile. And I definitely think it's possible as long as those little planetary gear sets like to keep up. So
I think it's possible after seeing some of the data that we've seen, the way the suspension is set up, the way the front end is set up. It's really, really nice to see. When I came over from my previous employer, I came over for a bunch of reasons, obviously to grow. But I think the racing aspect, I think you guys kind of took it like, hey man, we got to put the racing back in Lund Racing, because a lot of people kind of fell asleep a little bit going, oh, they're not really racing, they're just tuners, this and that. And then all of a sudden this happens and they go, shit, they actually started paying attention a little bit. And it's just nice to be a part of.
Well, I mean, we were posting old videos the other day in our little corporate chat room that we have between all of us. And, Seniors 03 Cobra, which is down there at Power by the Hour.
The one that twists really hard?
That twisted hard. In its heyday, 970 for a stock bottom end, Cobra was pretty good. Yep. And he did all the work himself in the garage. He tuned it himself. And a lot of people looked at that like, this guy's pretty awesome. I want to buy a tune from him. And that's just how it started. So it started with racing, going to the track and testing. And I remember growing up in high school, going with him, and I was the video guy, obviously. But I learned so much then just about drag racing, did some myself. I would say that life gets in the way with racing. Business gets in the way because it starts flourishing. But it's not that we're not racing, it's that we're helping other people achieve their goal. I think that what instigated us to do this was I think that some people were saying things that's like, oh, they don't race, like you said. They don't do this, they don't have that. And we're like, what's that about? Why can't we earn the same respect and do a really good job of what we're doing? So we're mail order tuners by day, but we have a 7-second street car by night. So
legit street car, because you guys drove it to get an alignment, correct? You drove it somewhere to get an alignment, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not like it's a street car because it physically can be on the street.
Yeah.
You actually drove it somewhere.
He had the radio on in the car, like he always does, going down the track. He had the heat on. We don't have AC on it right now, but that's because of a limitation with kit fitment. But
okay.
but it's going to go back on over the winter, and we plan on doing drag week with it next year. And
yeah, it's coming up your way, isn't it? Next year, drag week.
Yeah,
Do you think that thing can average a 7-second drag week?
I don't think it can average a 7. I think it can maybe average an 8.0. I don't know if I really want to do it that way, because I don't even know if the motor is going to continue lasting that long at that power level. There's some unknowns here, because we're in that territory. But 850s, I think there's an 850 class, and I think I can get it pretty consistent. And with the technology aid we're using with boost and power control, it can basically do the same ET on any surface once it's fine tuned. And that's the goal with drag week, is to be able to drive it around and with a trailer, whatever you want to do, and it's like a warrior run. It's just,
exactly.
You drive through the mud, the rain, and whatever.
Yeah, no, that car, after being around it a little bit, I looked at it and I'm like, this is not some rolling tin can. This thing is like, it's heavy to push. I mean, we pushed that car, and I'm like, this thing's heavy. And we've seen, remember how we were talking about, like, things break. It's kind of like the curse of Lund racing. Things break, and then you're just like, you're right. And then when things go right, it's just that much more, rewarding. Like,
right.
We got one. Thank goodness. So everything really worked out. Now, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but what was the decision behind going to a 17-inch setup as opposed to the 15-inch setup? You can just skirt that question totally, but if you have anything you want to share, if not, we'll just move on to something else.
So I think what happened was, we knew that we had a rental coming up, and both my dad and I were doing a lot of research on the suspension and launching the IRS. And I was just like, we need more camber adjustment on the rear. And I wanted to try something. Well, the 15s won't go out anymore because they just hit the fender. And he said, I'm not rolling the fender. And I said, let's just put a 17 on. And then we really liked how the billet specialty wheels looked.
They look great.
The fronts are really light. And that was the other thing, was weight. He was determined to pull a little weight out from over the summer. I think we got another 100 pounds out of it. So it went from like 3850 to 3750.
Right.
So that was the main driving force. And the other thing was, you can wrap a 305 on that 17 by 10. And we gained about an inch of contact patch on the back. And if you slow that video down of the top view of the car, you can really see it work the track. It's, pushing glue out, and it's just, that contact patch has got to be 12, 13 inches wide. So that's helping the grip. The camber really helps the tire get optimal grip. And that was the main thing, is just trying to optimize everything. Every little bit counts. Could we do that 7 with a 15? I think so. Could we do a 7 with a 6R80 and 417 first gear? Most definitely.
Absolutely.
Are we going to do that? No, we're not going to put one back in unless Senior gets a wild hair and wants to shove one back in there. But there's not enough people squawking to do that. And, we'll have a customer that wants to do it, and we'll gladly help them achieve that goal. And I'm not going to try to sell them on 4R200. So
right, whichever way they want to go. We have a couple of customers that are going with the billet front planetary that Brett LaSala does provide. It's an impressive unit. I actually held one in my hands, and it's beefy, it's heavy, it's like billet steel. It's very, very beefy in it, and I think the gears are made out of something else. But yeah, if a customer wants to party on a 6R80 and has a full send it build, I don't think we're afraid of making that happen. And I think there's a couple of local guys, local to you guys, right? The Evolution has been a part of that, are really close to something similar to the blue car, but with a 6R80 as opposed to the 4R200?
There may be some changes after Sunday. So
okay.
That's all I'm going to say about that. I would just, if everything comes together properly, silver and blue look really good going mid-7s at SGMP. So
that's pretty awesome. So I was at Power by the Hour the day after, on Monday, because my air conditioning compressor, the pulley that I got decided to just self-destruct. That car is cursed. That car is freaking cursed. But
Welcome to Lund Racing.
I'm telling you, I think the transmission's okay because I think the winding side. But let me just not get off the subject. But in 3 hours, 4 or 200 hubs sold because I heard them on the phone, and it was like once the news hit, I want that, and then dealers started calling up saying, "What's dealer pricing? Oh my God, I want that." And Jake was just like, it was almost like that seminal moment that it's like, there it is. That's what I've been waiting for. The acknowledgement that this is something that you and him worked on, and this is the payoff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the legitimacy of like, hey, it's working and it's awesome. It was just real cool to see that whole thing go down. I was just like, wow, that's pretty impressive. So, yeah, it's very good. Now, real quick, we're talking about Gen 3 stuff. Now, have you heard a lot of, okay, what do you think is a stronger bottom end? A Gen 2 bottom end or a Gen 3 bottom end? Just a short block. Let's forget the head, forget everything else. Just the short block. Because I know I have my thoughts. I have tuned cars that have made 900, high 800, and they're chilling. Gen 2. I'm not sure if I'd be that super like geeked about a Gen 3 version of that. You can again avoid it totally, or you can answer it whichever way you see fit. Because you tune a lot more 18s than I do.
Sorry, I'm reading the comments of the Manuel.
Yeah, I see Manuel's in there, Senior's in there, the whole crew is in there, just talking a bunch of shit.
I can't. That's distracting me. So Gen 2 versus Gen 3. We've tuned a few that obviously Jesus is probably the highest horsepower one. 164 trap is no joke. And while other camps think that it weighs 3,300 pounds somehow.
Where the hell did that come from? Like, is that just some stuff? Yeah.
You know how it goes. When you don't understand something, you just make stuff up. Or you accuse what you don't know. So it's just, you go with the easy route. Just like when people blame the tune when stuff blows up. So what you don't understand is easy to blame. And it's making probably 1,100 horse. Is that the norm? Probably not. That's probably the exception. Have we tuned ones that have made 900 plus and living? Yes. There's Ali, there's Jared's. Ours is made 800 plus without any issue. I don't know when the motor was made, if that has anything to do with it. I don't think there's enough data to say that. Have there been ones that have broken prematurely? Josh Baker, as everyone has seen, 1,000 plus, they think that a wrist pin broke. There's been others that have broken rods at lower power. I don't know what the problem is. The motors need to go to an engine builder that's willing to analyze, or potentially get one to an engine builder that's, someone identifies an issue before it breaks a rod. Maybe there's something else going on. I have not seen a Gen 2 motor break a rod as often. And I think you would agree, and a lot of other people would agree. Are the rods different? I don't know. I'm told it's the same part number. There's got to be something that's different. Maybe it's, they just make too much torque when you're running turbos through them. I have no idea. So.
Yeah, I mean, today my car has gone from a tick to a rattle, and I'm just like, fuck you. So I'm gonna change the oil tomorrow. Yeah, I'm gonna change the oil tomorrow to 530. Because I don't know, the last thing I want to do is put 550 in it and then have like Ford say, "Oh, you put 550 in it, so it's shit." So I'm just gonna put 530 in it. Good oil. Take the oil, send it off to get analyzed somewhere. I'll talk to Honeycutt about that as to where to send it, and just to see if they see anything like bearing material in it, and see what to do next about that.
I think, like Manuel just said, he says they're stronger. I think the ones that aren't duds probably are stronger. I think maybe a lot of the early ones maybe, but the ones that have the tick or rod knock is what it sounds like. None of the other Coyotes have had that. So
they've never, like my 11 didn't have it. My 15 didn't have it when it was OEM, bottom end, but the 18 has it and it's normal and okay. Get the fuck out of here. I don't believe that,
Yeah.
But a lot of people are like, oh, it's normal, it's fine. My diesel truck had it, and I'm like, oh, well, this isn't a diesel truck. This is none of my other Mustangs have had it, and it's a very similar setup. I was gonna start going through some of the questions, but it's basically become a shit talking fest between Senior, Manuel, and Dakota. So I'm just gonna
I don't even know. So something came up. Senior said he's tired of all the meat stroke BS. Time to call a spade a spade. What are we talking about?
I have no idea.
Is it motors or people who make motors?
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. So I'm going to scan some of the questions because we have about, I want to say 13 or 12 minutes left. So I want to kind of go through and see what the deal is. Some guy, Joe Pataki, says, do you need billet oil pump gears if you're running a Cobra Jet intake naturally aspirated? Do we recommend people upgrade their oil pump gears and cam sprocket if they're going to rev it high with the Cobra Jet setup?
I think that if they plan on doing it often, like I bring up Robert Ball a lot, but he's a really good example because he still has a stock 15 bottom end and he has oil pump gears and a sprocket in it because it's routinely shifted at 8,300 RPM without issue. And pistons are fine, compression's always been fine, and it still makes power. So I think it's just a good safety measure.
Okay. Yeah, because I had a guy actually recently, believe it or not, I think his crank sprocket broke because the car is fine, but once he revs it up, the cams really wig out and he gets cam codes. And I'm like, ooh, your oil pump gear seem fine, but you might have split your cam sprocket because if you look where the keyway is cut, that's where the least amount of metal is. And if it rolled once, I mean, you're done. Everything's off time. It's over. So he's like, well, when it warms up, it's fine. I'm like, yeah, but your cam position isn't fine. So if it rolled once, you're way out of time, and maybe it caught the keyway again.
Right.
It's over. It's over at that point.
If we see something on the log that doesn't look right, and it's one of those things where it's not that the sensor goes bad often, like sometimes O2s can lie to us on a log. But if it's the cam position, I've not seen the cam position sensors be wrong. So if we tell you that it's off and you say it runs fine, just listen to us.
Hey, I wanted to ask you, John, you recently got your hands on a F-150, a 5-liter, 10-speed F-150. What are your thoughts on that? I know we're tuning one that's running like almost 12 NA, right?
They're fun, specifically with a Whipple on it. They're really, really fun. I think that that market it should be pretty big. The one that I'm tuning now, I think it's a full-size Super Crew, which I didn't know. So 13.1 at 106 on pump gas is, I mean, that's really good. There's not even some EcoBoost trucks that are doing that. So not without octane or really aggressive tune. So
I saw that I actually, for the first time today, I got a tune in, and it was a 2.7 18 F-150. I went, all right, there we go. We're going to start pumping those out. And it was nice to see Pezzo. Pezzo's in love with that truck. He he actually said that he put 87 octane in it. I'm like, you did? He's like, yeah. He goes, Alex, it's still zippy. It feels good. I'm like,
great.
I'm gonna let you borrow the N-Gauge and log it for me because I want to make sure the knock sensor's not, killing all the time.
Well, that's like I think Michael Bibas is in here, and Brandon is his buddy, and he has a 17 F-150 3.5, and I sent him a tune, and he's like, oh yeah, this thing tows great. I'm like, you're towing with the performance tune? I've added some boost. Oh, yeah, it's great. I just watched the knock sensor. I'm like, okay.
I'm going to stare at it for a while. Oh,
yeah.
Man. So we do 3.5, 17, 16, and 15. We haven't done 3.5 EcoBoost 18 yet?
No, we have, so 17 3.5 and 18 3.5 are basically the same. I think I've read somewhere that the turbos I think the turbos on the 18 are from the Raptor.
Okay.
And the Raptors are the same, I think. I've not flashed a Raptor with a tune, but I plan on it soon. And they all tune very similar. So, yeah, we tune both. We can do N-Gauge or SCT on the website. So.
Yeah, I was wondering that because last time we left off, I didn't know if we were offering 3.5 EcoBoost 18 F-150 tunes, because I see a lot of people kind of put that up there because they buy a truck, they immediately get the 3.5 EcoBoost, they get, the bigger one, and they once they hear that has bigger turbos, that's what they'll get. So I get that question all the time. Do you tune trucks, EcoBoost? And I wasn't 100%. Is it up on the site and readily available? Okay.
Yeah, I just haven't opened up the floodgates yet with, putting out an advertisement, because if I put a post up, or if we do like a little sale or something where support vehicle Sunday or something, I don't want to say tow vehicle Tuesday, but most of them are tow vehicles, but our focus with them really hasn't been towing, even though our customers seem to think that you can tow with it. So, and maybe
they want a drag race tune, and that same tune tows their camper to Wisconsin on the hills and shit.
I can't prevent somebody from doing that. I can advise not to, but if they do it and they're smart about it, maybe it'll be okay. I have no idea. So I don't really change anything in the tune that's going to affect towing besides lots of torque. So,
right. Yeah. So real quick, before this thing cuts us off, what do you think about 2.3 liter EcoBoost Mustangs?
Oh my goodness. That was a good one.
I know your answer, but we get that question often.
Bolt-ons only. And
tell me what a bolt-on is that you find acceptable that on a 2.3 liter EcoBoost car.
Intake, a reasonably small spring wastegate, so like a 10-12 pound spring, good fuel, like 93 octane, and a downpipe. But guys that want to do built motor stuff and all that, I'm over it. So it's just because I don't want to speak on somebody else's terms, but UPR's car has been put through the ringer, and it's not tuning fault, it's not engine builder fault. It's just the fact that the motor just doesn't like power. So and I'm sure there's going to be purists that argue with me. But the thing needs a billet block, and the head needs to be welded onto it.
Just weld it on. It should be like one big unit that comes apart from the bottom.
It's an eco motor, and it's a piece of junk. So it's just, and when you want to build it, it's just like trying to polish a turd. So I'm sorry for all the EcoBoost guys. Sorry, Marshall.
I mean, I was at American Muscle one year for the previous employer, and some guy's like, "Why do you hate EcoBoost Mustangs?" I said, when they can blow up stock, I'm saying stock, when they can blow up and burn oil and you need all the help you can get. I mean, I just don't even want to start on that platform.
And the 18s don't even have port injection on them. So they put a 10-speed behind it. So it's always shifting and it's always in peak torque. Well, those motors hate torque. And then that's where, that phenomenon with direct injection mega knock happens. So
explain mega knock to the layman's, because they're like, mega knock.
I haven't really researched it enough to be totally verbed on it, but it has to do with pre-ignition, and some of it has to do with just fuel supply, and it can get a pocket in the cylinder, and it just makes a very large explosion. And it's usually very catastrophic. And it's at low RPM and high load, and those little tiny turbos do that. So
aside from, actually, I drove the one you guys have, and I was actually surprised how much torque it hits early. I'm like, this thing, it's like not instant, but it's very early and very snappy, and it makes me go, well, that can't be good for the rods. That can't be good for anything down there. And last I heard, they were like, I don't know, $18 or $19 rods, like real
23, cheap. Yeah. And they don't like that, and they don't like hitting the limiter after they've seen that. So if you weaken the rod and then you hit the limiter, it's going to break. Ask me how I know.
I heard you guys made a mess one year at was it Cecil or was it Maple Grove?
Cecil, yeah.
Cecil.
Literally put a hole in the block. In the burnout.
Right. That video's out there somewhere, but it almost went 10. What's the best it went?
11.03, because it went 11.09, 11.06, 11.03, and the reason it broke is because I e-brake boosted it in the pit to 30 pounds of boost, and it bent the rod, and then I hit the limiter.
Yeah, that sounds like a whole bunch of fun. I'm not really going to get to the questions here because it's become just like a chat room with your dad, Manuel, and everyone else down there. Pretty much, It's literally Steve
Yeah,
from
Steve.
UPR.
Steve said the crank ripped out of their Eco. It's true. Yeah.
The crank, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it saw 40 pounds of boost. Everything looked good on the log, and the crank wanted to come out. See, the crank doesn't even want to be in the EcoBoost motor.
Right. It knows.
It knows. It wants to be a Coyote. That's what it wants to be.
Yeah, it's like, man, I wish I was a little longer. Shit, this sucks.
I need 4 more cylinders.
But that car, like you said, has been put through the ringer. What's the quickest? Hey, Steve might be able to answer. What's the quickest the UPR EcoBoost has gone? 9.6s, I think.
9.4 at 144, and then it backed it up with a 9.5 on the same day, and then I forget what happened after that. That motor got hosed, so I think it lifted ahead. So.
Yeah, I mean that thing's been through the ringer. Now, when I would see it run the first time, I'm like, how is that long? Because it's little, and you're used to seeing little 4-cylinder motors do well, but not in such a big body. And it's just one of those like, okay, those motors do okay in a 1,500-pound chassis, something tiny. But this thing, I couldn't imagine living a long time. So what we'll do, John, is we'll end it here because we're getting close to that time, and I don't want to get cut off in some weird area. But I really appreciate you taking the time, answering the 4-200 questions, talking about the runs and how everything was set up with the S550. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off, or we'll just end it here and we'll get back together tomorrow at work?
Yeah, this is good, and we'll see everybody at Mod Nationals.
Perfect. And thank you, Junior and Senior, for both joining. And the whole midnight camp, talking a whole bunch of shit on the chat. I wish I could say this with the chat, but it's impossible. So we'll end it here, okay, Junior? We'll talk tomorrow.
Sounds good. Good night.
See you later.